Hello everyone, welcome to the world of stories. Once again, I'm here to share another true supernatural experience. Our story today is about four friends. They had planned a bike ride. People who are very interested in bike riding often plan long rides, and many of them ride at night. We've all driven cars or bikes at night. There's a unique peace and thrill to driving at night. In complete darkness, your car's headlights pierce through the dark. When it's just your vehicle on the road, it offers a distinct sense of relaxation. However, if the roads are unfamiliar and you rely solely on Google Maps, it can lead you to places from which it's very difficult to escape. What if Google Maps took you to a village where you encountered a supernatural power? That's exactly what happened in our incident today. We also have video footage of this incident, which we'll include with this story. So, stay with us. This story is about four friends, Joel, Ethan, Oliver, and Kyle, who planned a bike trip from Washington, D.C. to Harper's Ferry. Their trip plan involved first going from Washington, D.C. to Shepherdstown, a place located in Jefferson County, West Virginia, and then heading towards Harper's Ferry. They planned to stay overnight in Shepherdstown. Around 1 a.m., they left Washington, D.C. After driving about 30 miles, they reached the Shenandoah River Valley Road. Upon reaching there, they started their bike trip. Before that, they posted some photos on their social media accounts, and then they set off along the Shenandoah River Valley Road. There's a different kind of thrill to bike riding at night. They also had to be careful of the cars and trucks, speeding alongside them. Anyway, they stopped occasionally, had tea, ate something, and enjoyed their trip, reaching Shepherdstown after covering about 500 miles. Upon arrival, they found that there were no hotels available for them. The hotels that were showing online were all checking in after 11:30 p.m. Then they found out from the locals that there was a hotel that offered early check-in. They went there, put their belongings in the hotel, and rested. They were worried because there wasn't much in the hotel. After resting from the day's ride, Ethan and Kyle had to meet a friend who lived there. So they went during the day. Then they returned. Oliver was also feeling a bit tired, and they were supposed to start their trip again at night. They liked riding bikes at night because it was more exciting. So, when they all woke up in the evening, Ethan and Kyle said, "Let's go somewhere. My friend told me about a beautiful place with a small canal surrounded by lots of greenery and beautiful scenery. Let's go there." Oliver said, "I'm very tired. I'll rest. You guys go if you want." From there, Ethan, Kyle, and Joel went to see the canal. They reached there around 6 p.m. in the evening. They wandered around, and when it started to get dark, they left. The hotel was on the left side of the road they were returning on, and there was a railway station on the right side. The food they had eaten during the day was very bad. They weren't full. So, they went to the railway station to see if they could find something. There they found some samosas, which were very tasty. They ate some samosas, and packed some to take with them, because they realized that good food wasn't available in this place. They packed the samosas, and then headed towards their hotel. While they were riding their bikes towards their hotel, Kyle was driving the bike, Joel was sitting behind him, and Ethan was riding another bike. They were heading towards their hotel. On the way, they saw a narrow path going inwards. The path was going towards the jungle, and there were no lights there. Only their bike lights were visible. Kyle said to Joel, "Do you see this path? My friend told me that this path leads to an abandoned place, and there's a witch living in that abandoned place." Hearing his words, Joel said, "Oh, then let's go meet her." Kyle said, No, man, you're joking. I'm serious. My friend said that the place is very dangerous, and there's really a witch there. My friend also said that you shouldn't go there in the evening, and look, we've made it dark here. I'm a little scared." Joel said, "Oh, is that so? Well, imagine if the witch suddenly appeared in front of us, wearing a white sari." Kyle said, "Hey man, why are you scaring me? Nothing like that will happen. Don't bring unnecessary thoughts into your head." There were tall trees on the road. They were thinking about returning. What if the witch suddenly appeared in front of them from those trees? Hearing his words, Kyle said, "Man, I'm really scared." And he increased the speed of the bike, and they quickly reached their hotel. After reaching the hotel, they were supposed to go on their trip again. So they all started to freshen up one by one, packed their belongings, and had some food. Around 11:15 p.m., they checked out of their hotel. After checking out, since they didn't know the route properly, they turned on Google Maps. Google Maps showed them two routes to Harper's Ferry. One route was going through the expressway, which was 435 kilometers, and the other route was a shorter route, which was only 370 kilometers. There was no toll on the shorter route, but there was a toll on the expressway, and it was about 70 to 80 kilometers shorter. Seeing this, Ethan said, "Man, let's take the shorter route. It will save us time and toll." Joel said, "Okay, let's take this route. The expressway will just be a highway, but this route will be new for us, and it will be adventurous." They didn't know how adventurous this route was going to be for them. They chose that route on two bikes and set Google Maps. Before starting the trip, Kyle said, "Man, let's eat something." Joel said, "We won't eat here. The food isn't good. We'll stop at a dhaba on the highway ahead and eat there." They set off, and after driving for a while, they saw a big dhaba on the highway. They all stopped at that dhaba, and they ordered their food there. While their food was being prepared, Joel saw that Oliver and Ethan were quietly drinking something they had hidden in their bags. Joel was very strict and had some strict rules. He didn't like riding bikes after drinking. He got very angry at them and said, "Are you guys crazy? You're riding and drinking here?" He clearly told them that they wouldn't ride the bikes anymore. Oliver didn't want to listen to Joel, and they started arguing. Oliver got angry at Joel. Oliver was sitting on the bike with Joel earlier, but now he sat on the bike with Kyle. Oliver sat on Kyle's bike, and they started their journey again. Throughout the trip, Joel had a helmet camera, which was recording their entire trip. The route that Google Maps was taking them on was unfamiliar to them, and there were big potholes in between. At night, the only light was from their bike headlights. There were tall trees and dense jungle on both sides of the road. There was an eerie silence there. They were moving forward on that road. Whenever there was a pothole, they had to stop their bikes. So, Joel and Oliver, who were going ahead, were signaling Kyle and Ethan, who were following them, by honking whenever there was a pothole. They were moving forward like this. Suddenly, Oliver said to Joel, "Man, is my voice also being recorded in this camera?" Joel said, "Yes, man, your voice is also being recorded." Oliver said, "Then listen, I'll recite a shayari for you." Joel said, "Sure, recite it." Oliver said, "दस्त बंदले कफन में बॉटल, दस्तले कान में बॉटल, कब्र में बैठकर पिया करेंगे। इन लड़कियों से तो बेवफाई मिली, अब भुतनियों से सेटिंग किया करेंगे." Hearing him talk about ghosts in such a dangerous environment, Joel said, "What are you saying?" Hearing his words, Oliver also started laughing with Joel. They were laughing while riding the bikes, unaware of what was about to happen to them ahead. Like this, laughing and talking, another 2 hours passed, and it was almost 3 o'clock at night. They were going straight, and suddenly Google Maps told them to turn left. They got the indication to turn left. The highway was going straight, but Google Maps was telling them to turn left, which was basically another road. Google Maps often tells you to turn to another place to take you through a shorter route, and this often happens when you don't know the road. Many of us rely on Google Maps and travel on such roads. If you have had any experience where you got stuck on the road because of Google Maps, please let me know in the comments. This has happened to me not once, but about 3 to 4 times. The same thing happened to them today. While the highway was going straight, Google Maps told them to turn left, which was basically another road. After turning onto that road, Joel felt something strange, and he turned on the camera attached to his helmet. Now they were going on that dirt road, which was leading towards a village. There were houses in the village, but no lights were on in any of the houses. It felt like it was a ghost village. Google Maps was showing them the way through narrow roads. They were going through those roads on their bikes. You can see in the video how only the lights of their 2 bikes are visible in the entire village, and there are no other lights in the entire village. Following the route shown by Google Maps, they reached a place where the road split into 2. 4 dogs were sitting there. The dogs were sitting quietly, not making any noise. There was an eerie silence in the village. Imagine, it's 3 o'clock at night, and you 4 friends are wandering around in a village on bikes, following the route shown by Google Maps. Following the route shown by Google Maps, they reached a place where Google Maps turned around and stopped. There was dense darkness in front of the village, and there was no way to go further. Joel said to Oliver, "Did you put the correct location?" Oliver said, "Yes, man, I put the correct location. I'll put it again." Joel said, "You put the location. Meanwhile, we'll turn the bikes around from here." Before he finished speaking, Oliver said, Man, there's a left turn showing ahead." Hearing this, Joel quickly started his bike and turned left, and again they reached the same place where they had started from, wandering around in those narrow roads. This time, Google Maps told them to go right instead of left. They didn't understand what was happening. They started following the route shown by Google Maps again. This time they again wandered around in the narrow roads of the village, and while wandering, they reached a place where the road ahead was closed, but there was a dirt road with a lot of mud, which they could cross to go further. Joel loved his bike very much, so he didn't want to take the bike into the mud. He said, "Let's turn back from here." Oliver said, "Man, Google Maps is showing the road ahead. We just have to cross this little bit of road. I'll go and see if there's a road ahead." Kyle said, "Man, I'll go with you too." They both crossed the mud and went ahead. It was completely dark all around. Joel turned off his helmet camera and kept the bike light on so that they didn't go too far. He thought of calling them to ask if they were going too far. He was about to say something when Kyle and Oliver came running and shouting, "Man, turn the bikes around, run from here." Seeing them, Joel and Ethan quickly started turning their bikes around. Joel said, Come on, let's get out of here quickly." Joel got scared. He didn't understand what had happened from their voices. They said, Come on, let's get out of here quickly." Joel didn't understand which way they had come from. Following the route shown by Google Maps, he calmed down for a moment and started looking at the way they had come from. He turned the bike around in the village. And as soon as they turned the bike around, Ethan's helmet fell off his hand. They had to stop the bike to pick up the helmet. Ethan went to pick up the helmet, and they all felt that someone was around them. They couldn't see anyone, but they felt that someone was there around them. Now they didn't have any light to see anything. They were wandering around in the narrow roads of the village, but they couldn't find a way out. After wandering around 3 to 4 times, Oliver said to Joel, "Man, we're stuck in this ghost village. I don't think we'll be able to get out of here." Joel said, "Shut up, man. We'll definitely find a way out." Joel stopped the bike for a moment and thought for a while and said, "This is the way we have to go." And they started on that road. This road was going out of the village. As they were about to come out of the village through the narrow roads, they saw a woman standing in white clothes on the road, as you can see in the video. Seeing her, they increased the speed of their bikes. The woman didn't do anything else. They quickly drove their bikes and went straight on the road, which was going towards the highway. As Joel told me, they saw some men standing with the woman in the video. They quickly drove their bikes from there and reached the highway. They stopped the bikes there and took a sigh of relief. After getting off, Joel asked Oliver and Kyle, "Why were you running from the mud?" They said, "Man, we thought there was a road ahead, but when the mud ended, a jungle started. We went a little further. Suddenly someone was peeking from behind the trees. At first, we thought it was our imagination. But when we shone the torch towards the trees, we saw someone peeking who was wearing white clothes, but their face was not visible. Seeing this, we ran very fast and started shouting. You know what happened after that." After this, the 4 friends thanked God that they were able to get out of the village safely. Then they decided that they wouldn't stop anywhere until they reached their destination. They got on the bikes again and set off. After this, they didn't have any more experiences. But Oliver and Kyle were in bad shape because they had seen something that the other 2 hadn't seen. And whatever they had seen on the road, it didn't harm them. This was the experience of Joel and his 3 friends, which they had recorded on their helmet camera. They continued their journey, the highway stretching out before them like a ribbon of asphalt under the moonlit sky. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant hum of crickets. Joel, though shaken, tried to focus on the road, his hands gripping the handlebars tightly. The image of the woman in white, standing silently in the darkness, was seared into his mind. "Are you guys all right?" he asked, his voice a little shaky, breaking the tense silence. Ethan, still pale, nodded. "Yeah, just rattled." That was something else. Kyle, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up, his voice barely a whisper. I swear I saw its eyes. They were glowing. Oliver, trying to lighten the mood, chuckled nervously. Glowing eyes. Come on, man, you're just seeing things. It was probably just a reflection or something. No, Kyle insisted, his voice trembling. It was real. I saw them. The conversation died down again, replaced by the rhythmic rumble of the bikes. Joel glanced at his GPS. They still had a long way to go. The next town, according to the map, was a small place called Harmony Ridge, about an hour's ride away. Let's just keep moving, Joel said, his voice firm. We'll stop at Harmony Ridge and get some rest, maybe grab some coffee. They rode on, the darkness pressing in around them. The road twisted and turned, leading them through dense forests and rolling hills. The silence was broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant hoot of an owl. As they approached Harmony Ridge, the GPS indicated a detour. Google Maps says we need to take this side road, Joel announced, slowing down. It's supposed to be a shortcut. The side road was narrow and poorly maintained, the asphalt cracked and uneven. The headlights of their bikes illuminated a path that seemed to disappear into the thick woods. Are you sure about this? Ethan asked, his voice laced with apprehension. This doesn't look like much of a shortcut. It's Google Maps, Joel replied, trying to sound confident. It's never steered us wrong before. They turned onto the side road, the darkness closing in around them. The trees formed a canopy overhead, blocking out the moonlight and creating an eerie tunnel. The air grew colder, and a strange, heavy silence settled over them. After a few miles, they came to a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood an old, abandoned church. Its steeple was broken, and its windows were boarded up. The church looked like it had been abandoned for decades. What's this place? Oliver asked, his voice echoing in the stillness. Looks like an old church, Joel replied, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Let's keep moving. But as they tried to pass the church, their bikes sputtered and died. The headlights flickered and then went out, plunging them into complete darkness. What's going on? Ethan asked, his voice filled with panic. I don't know, Joel replied, his heart pounding. The bikes just stopped. They tried to restart the bikes, but they wouldn't turn over. The silence was broken only by the sound of their frantic attempts and the pounding of their hearts. Suddenly, they heard a sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone walking on a wooden floor. The sound was coming from inside the church. Did you hear that? Kyle whispered, his voice trembling. Yeah, Joel replied, his eyes fixed on the dark silhouette of the church. Let's get out of here. But as they tried to move, they felt a strange, invisible force holding them back. It was like they were trapped, unable to move. The tapping grew louder, and then they heard a voice, a soft, whispering voice that seemed to come from all around them. You are not welcome here, the voice whispered. They felt a coldness creeping over them, a sense of dread that was almost unbearable. They were trapped, surrounded by an unseen presence that seemed to want them gone. We need to leave, Joel said, his voice trained. Now! But they couldn't move. The invisible force held them in place, and the whispering voice grew louder, filling their minds with fear. Then, they saw it. A faint light, moving inside the church. It was like a candle, flickering in the darkness. The light moved closer and they saw a figure. A tall, slender figure dressed in white. It was the woman they had seen in the village. She moved towards them, her face still hidden in the shadows. The whispering voice grew louder, filling their minds with a sense of overwhelming terror. Leave, the voice hissed. Leave now, or you will never leave. The woman in white continued to glide towards them, her presence radiating an icy chill that seemed to seep into their very bones. The flickering light she held cast long, distorted shadows that danced across the clearing, making the abandoned church seem to writhe and come alive. What does she want? Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible above the pounding of his heart. I don't know, Joel replied, his eyes fixed on the approaching figure. But we need to find a way out of here. The invisible force holding them in place tightened. making it feel as though their limbs were encased in lead. The whispering voice intensified, a chorus of malevolent whispers that swirled around them, filling their minds with images of dread and despair. "You have trespassed on sacred ground," the voice hissed, its words echoing in their skulls. "You have disturbed the slumber of the forgotten." Kyle, his face pale and clammy, began to tremble uncontrollably. "We didn't mean any harm," he stammered, his voice cracking. We just got lost." The woman in white stopped a few feet away from them, her face still obscured by the shadows. She raised the flickering light, and for a brief moment, they caught a glimpse of her eyes. They were not human eyes, but glowing orbs of an unearthly spectral light, filled with an ancient, malevolent intelligence. "Lost?" the voice echoed, a hint of cruel amusement in its tone. "You are not lost. You are here for a reason." Before they could react, the woman in white raised her hand, and a wave of icy energy washed over them. The clearing around them seemed to warp and distort, the trees twisting into grotesque shapes, the ground beneath them vibrating with an unseen power. "We need to get out of here," Joel shouted, his voice filled with desperation. He tried to move, to break free from the invisible force, but it was no use. They were trapped, caught in the woman's spectral grip. The woman in white began to move again, gliding towards them with an ethereal grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. The flickering light she held pulsed with an eerie rhythm, casting dancing shadows that seemed to mock their fear. "You will stay," the voice whispered, its words laced with a chilling finality. "You will join the forgotten." As she drew closer, they felt a sense of overwhelming despair, a feeling that their very souls were being drained away. The air grew colder, and the whispering voices intensified, filling their minds with a cacophony of dread. Suddenly, Oliver, who had been silent until now, let out a cry. "No!" he shouted, his voice filled with a desperate defiance. "We won't let you!" He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small silver crucifix. He held it up, his hand trembling, and faced the woman in white. "In the name of God, I command you to leave!" he shouted, his voice echoing in the clearing. The woman in white recoiled, her spectral eyes widening in surprise. The flickering light she held flickered wildly, casting chaotic shadows that swirled around her. "You dare defy me?" the voice hissed, its tone filled with rage. Oliver held the crucifix higher, his hand trembling but his resolve firm. "I dare," he replied, his voice filled with a newfound strength. "You have no power here." The woman in white began to waver, her form flickering like a dying flame. The whispering voices grew louder, a chorus of anguished cries that filled the clearing. "You cannot stop me," the voice hissed, its tone filled with a desperate fury. "I am the guardian of this place. I am the voice of the forgotten." But Oliver stood firm, his eyes fixed on the wavering figure. "You are nothing," he shouted, his voice ringing with conviction. "You are a shadow, a memory. You have no power over us." The woman in white let out a spectral shriek, a sound that seemed to tear through the very fabric of reality. The flickering light she held exploded in a burst of blinding radiance, and then she was gone, vanishing into the darkness like a wisp of smoke. The invisible force holding them in place vanished, and their bikes sputtered back to life, their headlights illuminating the clearing once more. The whispering voices were gone, replaced by the sound of their ragged breaths and the pounding of their hearts. They stood there for a moment, their bodies trembling, their minds reeling from the terrifying encounter. The abandoned church loomed in the darkness, its silhouette a stark reminder of the spectral presence they had just faced. What was that?" Kyle whispered, his voice barely audible. "I don't know," Joel replied, his voice still shaky. "But I think we need to leave. Now." They mounted their bikes and sped away from the clearing, the abandoned church shrinking into the darkness behind them. The road stretched out before them, a ribbon of asphalt leading them away from the spectral encounter and towards the unknown. They knew they had faced something ancient and malevolent, something that had sought to claim them as its own. They also knew that they would never forget the woman in white, the guardian of the forgotten, and the chilling whisper that echoed in their minds. "You will join the forgotten." They rode in silence, the engines of their bikes a low, steady hum against the backdrop of the night. The aftershocks of their encounter still lingered, a cold dread that clung to them like a shroud. The image of the woman in white, her spectral eyes glowing in the darkness, was burned into their retinas, a haunting reminder of the power they had faced. As they pressed on, the landscape began to change. The dense forests gave way to rolling hills, and the air grew thinner, cooler. The road climbed steadily, winding its way through the mountains. According to the GPS, Harmony Ridge was still a few miles away, nestled in a valley hidden among the peaks. "How much further?" Ethan asked, his voice strained, breaking the silence. Joel glanced at the GPS. "About 5 miles," he replied. "We should be there soon." They continued their ascent, the road twisting and turning like a serpent. The darkness was profound, broken only by the beams of their headlights cutting through the inky blackness. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the rhythmic rumble of their bikes and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. As they rounded a bend, they saw it, a faint glow in the distance, a warm, inviting light that pierced the darkness. It was Harmony Ridge, nestled in the valley below, its lights a beacon in the vast expanse of the night. They descended into the valley, the road winding its way down the mountainside. The town was small, a cluster of houses and shops gathered around a central square. The lights were soft and welcoming, a stark contrast to the darkness they had just left behind. They pulled into the town square, the engines of their bikes sputtering to a halt. The town was quiet, almost deserted. A few lights flickered in the windows of the houses, but there was no sign of life. "This place is dead," Kyle muttered, his voice echoing in the stillness. "It's late," Joel replied, his eyes scanning the empty square. "Everyone's probably asleep." They found a small motel on the edge of the square, its neon sign casting a warm, inviting glow. The motel was old, but it looked clean and well-maintained. They checked in, their weariness evident in their slow, deliberate movements. Inside their room, the silence was broken only by the hum of the air conditioner and the occasional creak of the old building. They sat on the edge of the beds, the weight of their experience pressing down on them. "What do you think that was?" Oliver asked, his voice barely a whisper. Joel shook his head. "I don't know," he replied. "Something old, something powerful." "That voice," Kyle said, his voice trembling. "It was like it was inside my head." "It wanted us to stay," Ethan said, his eyes wide with fear. "It wanted us to join the forgotten." They fell silent, the words hanging in the air like a chilling premonition. The image of the woman in white, her spectral eyes glowing in the darkness, filled their minds. "We need to leave in the morning," Joel said, his voice firm. "We need to get as far away from here as possible." They agreed, their voices hushed, their eyes filled with a shared sense of dread. They knew they had stumbled upon something ancient and malevolent, something that had sought to claim them as its own. As they lay in their beds, the silence of the room was broken only by the rhythmic hum of the air conditioner. But in their minds, the whispering voice echoed, a chilling reminder of the spectral presence they had encountered. "You will join the forgotten." Sleep eluded them, their minds filled with images of the woman in white and the abandoned church. They knew they had escaped, but they also knew that they would never truly be free from the memory of what they had seen. As dawn approached, a sense of urgency filled them. They packed their belongings, their movements swift and efficient. They were eager to leave Harmony Ridge, to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the spectral encounter. They mounted their bikes, the engines roaring to life, breaking the stillness of the morning. They rode out of Harmony Ridge, the town shrinking in their rearview mirrors. The road stretched out before them, a ribbon of asphalt leading them away from the valley and towards the unknown. They pressed on, their eyes fixed on the horizon, their hearts filled with a desperate hope that they had left the darkness behind,